Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today it's time for Rank in Peace. I'm going to be ranking Megadeth studio albums from worst to best. Kicking off the list here with my least favorite Megadeth record, coming in at number 15, I'm going to go with Risk from 1999, and this album is the epitome of does nothing for me. It's a really lackluster release here by Megadeth, released around the time where Dave Mustaine was very much laser focused on writing a radio hit here, and I think the overall product definitely suffers because of it. It's very out of character for Megadeth, and usually I'm in support of bands following the natural progression of their sound and challenging their audience with something different and a bit more mature in their songwriting process. But in this particular instance here, it's a very weak album and really is a far departure from the Megadeth sound and the classic sound that made them so popular in the first place here. So Megadeth, not one of those bands that can change up their sound like that and, still produce good results. At least not on this album. I mean, Prince of Darkness is a good song, but aside from that, this album is very lackluster and boring here. And like I said, it's Dave Mustaine trying to write a radio hit and striking out all over the place on this record, in my opinion. I don't own it. I really have no desire to own it outside of just picking up every Megadeth album, and there are a handful here on the bottom of the list that I don't own, but I do have a majority of the Megadeth records, and I have opinions on all of them, and in my opinion, Risk is the worst Megadeth album in their catalog, my least favorite, so it's going to come in all the way at the bottom here at number 15. From 1999, I'm going to go with Risk. Next to number 14, I'm going to go with 2013's Super Collider. Another really weak, lackluster Megadeth record, and it's a shame, too, because Dave Mustaine had been hyping up this album up and down for quite a bit up until its release, and when the album finally came out, it was just this plodding, boring record here by Megadeth. I'd say definitely one of the more hated metal records of the last 10 years or so by the metal community, and I definitely understand why. It's another album that I don't own, and that's basically because I really have no desire to listen to it, It's another record that, if I were ever in the mood to hear Megadeth, definitely would not go to. So, outside of being a completist and completing my Megadeth collection at some point, I'm sure I'll pick it up down the line, but aside from that, I really have no interest in listening to this album, so coming in at number 14 here, another really lackluster release by Megadeth is 2013's Super Collider. A total mess of an album, and like I said, probably one of the more hated Megadeth records in their catalog. So number 14 on the list is 2013's Super Collider. Coming in at number 13, I'm going to go with 2001's The World Needs a Hero. This album does feature the return of bassist David Ellefson to the band, so that was a good sign going in, but with the exception of a handful of tracks on here, including Return to Hanger, Dread and the Fugitive Mind, and Promises, I think the rest of this album is largely forgettable and pretty lackluster. Despite being a definite improvement from 1999's Risk, it's not one of the stronger albums in the Megadeth catalog, hence why I have it more towards the bottom of the list here. Definitely not one of my favorites, and all in all, like I said, it's largely forgettable. Coming in at number 13, I'm going to go with The World Needs a Hero, which, like I said, it does mark the return of David Ellefson, and there are a few standout tracks, but all in all, it's not very memorable, in my opinion, so that's why I have it towards the bottom. For my number 12, I'm going to go with 1997's Cryptic Writings here. Definitely not one of the strongest Megadeth albums, but definitely decent here with some really solid tracks, so in general, I'd say this album is good, not great, but there are some moments of greatness on here, with some standouts being Trust, Almost Honest, Use the Man, which is really good acoustically during the Megadeth Unplugged in Boston, a live album that just put out, I believe it was last year or the year before that, but really solid there, and a great track that translates really well to the acoustic setting as well, so definitely enjoy that aspect of this song, and let's see what else is on here. I'll Get Even, Sin, She-Wolf is a great track, and Vortex as well. Really solid album here, and like I said, there are some moments of greatness, but in general, it's just kind of a decent Megadeth record. Definitely doesn't stand up to some of the other classic records that were released by the band in the 90s, but nonetheless, I think it's really solid here, and pretty enjoyable nonetheless, so it comes in at number 12 here on my list. Next, at number 11, I'm going to go with 2007's United Abominations, and this album is very solid here, right? Some really heavy material on here, like Sleepwalker to open things up. Washington is next as well. Burnt Ice is really solid, and then, of course, you have that collaboration with Christina Scabia from Lacuna Coil on the re-recording of A Tu Le Monde, which is originally on Youthanasia, which I'll get to in a little bit, but that cover, I guess is it a cover? It's sort of a collaboration, re-recording one of their more famous tracks, and it's solid, although it's a bit pointless. I'm not really sure why they did that. I would have much rather they collaborated with her on an original track, but nonetheless, a solid re-recording there by Megadeth, and in general, this album is just that. It's solid. It's not great, but it's not bad either, so I have it at number 11 here. Don't love it, but I don't hate it either. It's very decent in the Megadeth catalog, so coming in at number 11, I'm going to go with 2007's United Abominations. Moving on now into the top 10, and coming in at number 10, I'm going to go with 2004's The System Has Failed. Really solid record that was originally intended to be a Dave Mustaine solo project, but was eventually rebranded as Megadeth before its release. It features foreign Megadeth guitarist Chris Poland here, who plays on this record, does a really great job. Definitely a throwback in that aspect, and it's a great return to form as well. The band returning here in 2004 with a vengeance, with a really heavy record, so I do think it's a pretty enjoyable album, despite I don't own it currently right now. I think it's great stuff, and I would definitely be open to picking it up in the future. It's smooth sailing from here on out, all Megadeth records that I would classify as great. So that said, coming in at number 9, I'm going to go with 2011's 13. This is, in my opinion, probably one of the better Megadeth records released in the 21st century. Great stuff on this album, including Sudden Death, Public Enemy Number 1, which is just a modern Megadeth classic. Great stuff on that track. Definitely one of my favorite Megadeth songs. Whose Life Is It Anyway? Which is a great track. We the People, Never Dead, Black Swan, Wrecker, and then Deadly Nightshade to close things out. It's an awesome album from beginning to end. Super heavy. The band are killing it. You can see them on the back. Just great stuff here. So coming in at number 9, I'm going to go with 13 from 2011. A great record, and like I said, definitely one of the best from the 21st century from the Megadeth catalog. Speaking of classic Megadeth albums from the 21st century, coming in at number 8 here on the list, I'm going to go with 2009's Endgame. This album has everything I could possibly look for in a Megadeth record. You know, you got fantastic blistering guitar work on here, great drumming, aggressive rapid-fire lyrics and delivery by Dave Mustaine. Just an absolutely fantastic Megadeth record here that checks all the boxes for me. This album is loaded from beginning to end with really heavy, thrashy material, but if I had to pick some standouts, some of my favorites, I guess I'd have to go with Dialectic Chaos, This Day We Fight, 44 Minutes, Bite the Hand, Endgame, the title track, which is fantastic as well. The Right to Go Insane to close things out, and then Head Crusher as well, which is really heavy. Great stuff from beginning to end on this album, and it's a total thrash metal essential from the 21st century on here. A great record, and definitely one of the best in the Megadeth catalog. Definitely worthy of a spot in the top 10, so coming in at number 8, I'm going to go with 2009's Endgame. Remaining in the 21st century here for my number 7 on the list, I'm going to go with the most recent Megadeth record from 2016, Dystopia, and this album coincided with right around the time when I was getting into Megadeth, so it made for a really great introduction to the band, and this album is loaded with incredible material on here. It's a real throwback album, and in my opinion, definitely the best Megadeth record since Youthanasia from 1994, so that's a great sign here. And when it comes to, and 2016 was loaded with great thrash metal albums, so when it comes to some of the best thrash from 2016, this has to be right up there. Great stuff, and when it comes to some standouts for me, I'm going to go with The Threat Is Real, Dystopia, the title track, Fatal Illusion, Death From Within, Post-American World, Poisonous Shadows, which just has a really haunting, creepy atmosphere to it that I really enjoy. Foreign Policy, which is one of my favorite Megadeth album closers as well. Super heavy there, so all in all, this album is fantastic and loaded with great material here by Megadeth in the 21st century. So, like I said, I think it's the best Megadeth album to be released since Youthanasia. So coming in at number 8 here, I'm going to go with 2016's Dystopia. For number 6, how about So Far, So Good, So What? From 1988 here. Now, speaking of great years for thrash, I was just talking about that with 2016. 1988 was an incredible year for thrash metal as well. This is another great record that I would put right up near the top when it comes to some of the best thrash releases from that year. Great stuff here, despite this album being probably the most forgotten album in that early Megadeth catalog, unfortunately, because this is a great album here. You know, with tracks like Into the Lungs of Hell, Set the World Afire, the Anarchy in the UK cover, which I know a lot of people don't like, but I enjoy it. You know, 502, Mary Jane, In My Darkest Hour, which is probably the best-known song from this album. It still is a live staple for the band, and one of their best-known tracks. Liar, which is fun. Then Hook and Mouth, an incredible album closer on here. A great thrash metal release, and even though it's a bit forgotten in the Megadeth catalog, especially when looking at their early years, I think there's some great stuff on here. So, coming in at number 6, I'm going to go with 1988's So Far, So Good, So What? Breaking into the top 5 now, I'm going to go with 1994's Youthanasia. This album is really interesting to me because it marks the band in between two different eras and two different sounds. You know, you can definitely hear the band here incorporating aspects of that early classic thrashy Megadeth sounds on here, but also mixing it with the commercialism that they dabbled in on Countdown to Extinction. So on this record, you have two different sounds blending together to create something really cool, and of course, you have the classic lineup of Mustaine, Menza, Ellefson, and Friedman firing on all cylinders on this record, and in my opinion, it's Dave Mustaine's best vocal performance with great vocals on tracks like Reckoning Day, Train of Consequences, Addicted to Chaos, A Tout Le Monde, Elysian Fields, The Killing Road, Youthanasia, I Thought I Knew It All, and Victory. So a lot of standouts on here. It's a great album, and like I was talking about before, I don't think the band would release an album on this level until 2016's Dystopia. So kicking us off in the top 5, I'm going to go with Youthanasia from 1994. For number 4, how about their debut record from 1985, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good. Definitely one of the all-time best thrash metal debuts, and while a lot of thrash debuts sound the same, this one is unique, and it's definitely a raging album here. You got Dave Mustaine with Something to Prove, super ambitious after being removed from Metallica, on lead vocals here, and although Dave Mustaine really didn't settle, didn't really come into his own as a lead vocalist yet, he still does a great job on here, and you can definitely hear the ambition in his voice, as well as the anger, which is a huge driving force on this album as well. There are some fantastic thrash metal classics on here, like Love to Death, the title track, Skull Beneath the Skin, Rattlehead, Chosen Ones, Looking Down on the Cross, Mechanics, and These Boots. It's an incredible thrash metal debut, really fun to listen to, and again, you can definitely hear the ambition and the anger in Dave Mustaine's voice. An incredible debut album here by Megadeth from 1985, my number 4 on the list. Top 3 now, I'm going to go with Countdown to Extinction from 1992. This album definitely marks the band beginning to break through in the mainstream here, taking a much more commercial approach to the follow-up to Rust in Peace from 1990, and it's very reminiscent of how Metallica changed up their sound on the Black Album here. You have the band fine-tuning their production on this record, as well as beginning to write shorter, more commercial songs, so that's really interesting, and there's a lot of stigmatism around bands who commercialize their sound to make their albums more mainstream accessible, but when it goes right, it can yield great results, like the Black Album, like Countdown to Extinction right here. Great record, and even though it's a little bit different for the band at the time, I think they really pull it off on here with tracks like Skin of My Teeth, Symphony of Destruction, which would go on to be probably their best-known song. Let's see, Foreclosure of a Dream, Architecture of Aggression, Sweating Bullets, the super underrated title track, Countdown to Extinction, High Speed Dirt, Psychotron, Captive Honor, which is really fun, and Ashes in Your Mouth to close things out. And, you know, similarly to how I feel about the Black Album, the more I hear the album, the more I appreciate the deeper tracks more and more, because I've just heard a lot of the more famous tracks just over and over again, a lot more than I have the deep cuts. So I definitely appreciate tracks on here like Psychotron, Captive Honor, Countdown to Extinction, This Is My Life, more and more. You know, the more I hear Symphony of Destruction, the less I want to hear it, you know. So when it comes to some of the more underrated tracks on here, they're definitely my favorites from this album, but all in all, it marks the band taking a more commercial direction, and I'm all for it. It's a great album, and it's my number 3 on the list. Gotta go with 1992's Countdown to Extinction. For my number 2, I'm gonna go with Peace Sells, But Who's Buying from 1986 here. Definitely one of the best sophomore albums of all time, and, you know, I think this definitely marks the band really coming into their own following their debut, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good. It definitely marks the band maturing a bit in their production, which it's unfortunate that all I have to show for it is the terrible remaster, but you get what I'm trying to say. The album here definitely marks the band really coming into their own, and that's awesome, with great tracks on this record, including Wake Up Dead, The Conjuring, the incredible title track, Peace Sells, with that iconic bass intro by David Ellefson. You got Devil's Island, Good Morning, Black Friday, Bad Omen, My Last Words. Just an incredible album here from beginning to end. Definitely one of Megadeth's best. Coming in at number 2 here on the list, I'm going to go with the awesome sophomore record here, Peace Sells, But Who's Buying from 1986. And finally, coming in at number 1, in my opinion, the best Megadeth album ever made, is got to be Rust in Peace from 1990 here, and in addition to this being my favorite Megadeth album, it also has a legitimate contendership to being the best metal album of all time as well. An incredible record here. It's stacked from top to bottom. It's Megadeth's magnum opus, and the material on here is just loaded from beginning to end. You got Holy Wars, The Punishment Due, Hangar 18, Take No Prisoners, Five Magics, Poison Was the Cure, Lucretia, Tornado of Souls, and then Rust in Peace Polaris. Incredible stuff from top to bottom here. It's the first album with the classic lineup of Mustaine, Ellefson, Menza, and Friedman, and this lineup here was firing on all cylinders. It's the best Megadeth lineup for a reason. An incredible record here by Megadeth to kick off the 90s, which would be a very successful decade for them. Kicked off with this great metal essential here, a total thrash metal classic, and my number 1 on the list, 1990's Rust in Peace. So that wraps up ranking Megadeth studio albums from worst to best. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications to be notified of a new upload. Let me know down in the comments below as well, what's your favorite Megadeth album of all time? I'd be very interested in hearing your opinions, so let me know all that good stuff in the comments. And be sure to vote in the community tab to vote for which band's studio albums I'll rank next week here on the channel. Be sure to vote once you're done with this video over in the community tab. Every vote is appreciated. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.